So I've just been reading The Silk Roads by Peter Frankopan. It's so eye-opening. It talks about the Silk Roads, which is one of the oldest trade routes. The route goes back to 130 BC and went from Europe to the Middle East, to Asia, to the Far East. He gives a great insight into how interconnected the world was, more than we can imagine and think about today. And this was way before planes were even invented. The world didn't really operate in boundaries and nation states as it does now. Trade really did control the world back then as it does now, and to have control of the Silk Roads was to have power and immense wealth. So the rise of Islam in the 7th century brought a huge crisis to the world of Christendom. And as more and more regions came under Muslim control, they started to have more power over certain areas of the Silk Road. Muslim empires brought strength, wealth, and civilization. Soon after the Prophet's death, the Caliph Umar brought Jerusalem under the Muslim realm. Prior to that, it was loosely part of the Roman Empire, and there was constant friction between the Romans and the Persians, and Jerusalem and surrounding areas saw a lot of fighting and instability. And under the Muslims, there was huge investment into these areas and they flourished. So there were various crusades from the Christians to try and win back control of Jerusalem, as it was seen as a power base. Frankopan argues that it was more to do with power and wealth rather than a religious conviction. When it became difficult for the Christians to reach Jerusalem through the Silk Roads, because the Muslims controlled a lot of these areas, that's when they started to look for a way to the east and the Holy Land from the sea and through the west via the Atlantic. And this is when Christopher Columbus and subsequent explorers went to try and find this route and discovered the Americas. And as a result, this shaped the world as we know it today. Their discoveries would lead to the rise of Europe, but at the expense of the land and the people who they raped and pillaged along the way. With the New World came the birth of the Atlantic slave trade, where Europe would get slaves from Africa and use them to work in their new lands and in Europe. So everything that's happening in the world today is a result of this history. Europe's unholy past has had repercussions across the whole world. Healing will only come from knowing the truth, and from there trying to build a new and better world. This cannot be built on cover-ups and lies. I really love this book. It gives such a good overview and it puts historical events into context. Frankopan's presentation of the Muslim world is also very refreshing. He shows how advanced the Muslim empires were. He highlights the threat that they posed to the Western world, and this motivated the Western world to do whatever they could to defeat the threat of Islam. The threat of the Muslim world prompted the discovery of the Americas, and with this brought the birth of the empire and more violence and brutality. I really wish books like this were around when I was at university and studying history. We were given set reading lists, and these were predominantly books by Western historians who had this Orientalist view, and it was frowned upon if we used books that deviated from these set views. So it's really positive that there is more literature now out there. There's more knowledge and understanding of what really happened in history, and hopefully books like this can present wider views and expose the brutal truth of empire.